Okay, so I was scrolling on eBay and I just came across this camera that was just listed. It's a C100 for $144. Now it is listed for parts only, which it makes sense at this price, but the description isn't super descriptive, but also it doesn't really look like this eBay seller is specifically a camera related seller, and it says it doesn't come with a battery or any cords or cables. And so my best guess is maybe they haven't even tested it yet, which even if it doesn't have a screen, like if I could just hook up an external monitor and it'd still be fully working for barely over $100, that would be pretty crazy. So like I said, this was just listed, so I'm really trying to scoop this up real quick before someone else does. So I'm gonna send a $100 offer, and I think whatever they counter offer, I'm just gonna accept it. I mean, even at $140, I feel like this is for sure worth the risk for me, and I really don't want someone else to scoop this out from under me, so we'll see what we can do. I just bought a Canon C100 cinema camera for $110. Now this camera, when it was released, it retailed for about $8,000, and even nowadays, it's about a 10-year-old cinema camera, but it still sells for about $500 to $800 used, which is a lot more than I got this one for. But there is a catch. I have no idea if this camera works, and there is some damage to it, which we'll get into, of course. I'm gonna pull it out and take a look. But what I do know is it looks like the rear screen on this camera was just ripped completely off. But it seems like the seller that I bought this from also doesn't know anything about it, and so I have no idea how the seller that I got it from got this camera. But luckily, I have all the equipment I need to test this out and see if it works. But I also do have an idea for trying to repair the screen on this camera. But I'll get into that in a little bit. First of all, let's just pull this thing out and see what kind of condition it's in and if it even powers up in the first place. All right, here we go. Alright, it looks like it was packaged really well. That's a good sign. At least we know no further damage has happened to it. Here we go, we got a Canon C100. Now it does look like there is a side handle on it, which is a good sign. And then there's a screen right there. You can see it's definitely disconnected. Yeah, let's just try to get all that stuff off real quick. So there's the camera, yeah, you can see all those just frayed wires. And this is obviously, you know, the hinge and the mount that it would be connected to originally. All right, and then last thing, let's just get the screen out of here. And all right, now it looks like the wires are kind of down deep into there. So here's my original plan. From the pictures I saw, it looked like there was 10 or less, you know, different wires inside of this little bundle here that connects the screen to this. And so my idea was just to get some really thin gauge wires and just pretty much try to solder these and connect them back together and get ourselves at least a working display. Now looking at it now, that might be a little bit difficult. Now even if that doesn't work, if this camera still powers up and is fully functional with just an external display or even the viewfinder, to have a mostly fully working besides the built-in screen C100 for 110 bucks, that's still 100% worth it for me personally. And just looking at this now, I mean, I don't see any other damage that looks like this, you know, fell down a hill or a cliff or something crazy like that. All right, there's a pretty big smudge on the sensor, but that shouldn't be anything that I can't just clean off. Besides that, it looks pretty clean on there. Let's make sure the ND filters work. That's another pretty big thing. Yeah, ND filters work. All right, I'm not gonna waste any more time. Let's plug this battery in and see if it powers up. All right, battery's in, I didn't hear anything. Well, this is the moment of truth. I'm just gonna listen for the fan to turn on or anything like that. And then of course we'll plug in this external monitor and go from there. Let's try to power it on in 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm not hearing anything so far. I didn't hear the fan kick on or anything like that, so I'm gonna try a few things. First of all, I'm gonna try to separate these wires as much as I can, because maybe if they're touching each other and shorting out, it's confusing the camera or something like that. So just a random thing I wanna try. I also wanna hit the reset button and just reset this and see what happens then. And then lastly, I have a DC input I'm gonna try on this as well, just in case there's something to do with the battery input. I definitely was hoping to hear it power on right away. Let's also just plug this in real quick as well. We've got our AC adapter. We got a little needle to hit the reset button on this as well. 2 more things we'll try real quick. DC input running in. Let's try to reset this real quick first. Absolutely nothing. All right, it sounds like we're gonna have to figure out a new plan here. So one of my initial thoughts right now, I don't know how realistic this would be, but I'm just thinking some of these wires shorting out or touching each other, they've gotta be, because there's probably 20 different, you know, wires in there. So if they're shorting out, it could have just caused some weird issue. It could have, you know, even done something worse, like blown a fuse or something like that. I feel like that's kind of unlikely because this is probably a really low voltage, you know, going into this monitor. My other thought is, you know, depending on how this was damaged, I mean, it could be anything from the camera falling who knows how many feet and, you know, hitting on this and snapping it off. It could have been somebody just knocking into it and ripping the monitor off, you know, if it was flipped up or something or flipped out. So I have no idea how this was damaged, but it could be just, you know, whatever did cause this damage caused even more damage internally. All right, I'm gonna do some brainstorming and then we'll keep working on this thing, see what we can do with it. See if we can get this $110 C100 working in any possible way. All right, let's do that. All right, I'm gonna open up this monitor real quick and just see if there's a connector at the end of these or if they're just soldered into the main board, and it should give me an idea of what it's like on the other side as well. If there's a connector on this end, I'm guessing there is on the other end. Obviously, I'm not 100% sure, but it'll also give me an idea of how much wire I have to work with on here if I decide to try to solder these together. You know, I gotta be honest, I'm not super confident in this, but it's still something to learn from. I'm gonna pull this apart, see what we can find in there, and then break into the camera, see if we see anything on that end. That is what I like to see. So it looks like there is a connector there going out to these wires, and then you can see they're obviously frayed off right there. Now, hopefully I can find a replacement of this that I can purchase, which would be ideal. But the thing is, I also don't know if this is what's causing the problem. Like, I don't know if the camera can tell that there's some sort of issue with these, again, if they're shorting out on the camera side, if something weird's happening because of these, or if it's just a totally different issue of why I can't power this up and use it. That's what I don't know, and that's kind of the trickiest part here, because, you know, I could do all the effort to replacing this and then just nothing really happens. And so I'm gonna dive in deep in trying to find a replacement part for this. But first I gotta make sure I can actually access this end as well. All right, quick update on that cable. I've searched everywhere. I cannot find a supplier for that cable, whether it's new or used or anything like that. Now, I did find the full monitor hinge with that cable a part of it, and I'm not sure if maybe that's the only way it's ever been sold, is just as one unit like that. But I saw that for sale for $250, which it really just isn't worth it at that price. So unfortunately, it looks like we're not gonna be able to replace that actual cable itself. But definitely keep watching, because I have a little secret over there that we might be able to at least get somewhere with this project and get something out of it. So yeah, keep watching for that, and let's get back to it. Now there's so many screws and pieces that I really just don't want to lose, you know, where any of these go. So I've made some really rough diagrams just to help out with, you know, putting everything back together. All right, here we go. I got the ribbon cable off. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this side panel back on over here so that we can use that power switch, and we're gonna try to power up with this off and see what happens. Otherwise, it's looking like this somehow it does have some other damage that I'll have to look into. I don't really see anything from taking it apart. I don't see any liquid damage. I don't see any drop damage or anything like that. But let's just see what happens with this. All right, it's been longer than I'd like to admit, and I kind of wrote this project off, to be honest. I did a ton of research behind the scenes, and I did a ton of testing as well, just off camera. And really just with my skill set, with my knowledge, I was pretty much just ready to write this project off until I remembered something. I've had a little something sitting around for the last almost 3 years at this point that I took out of storage. So there's technically a Canon C100 in here. Basically, if you want to learn more about this, I'll link the video down in the description that I made when I first got this. This is a really interesting product that I really don't know a lot about still. I really never figured out a whole lot about what this exactly is, but I do know that this is kind of a torn apart Canon C100 in here that is just missing a bunch of the parts and pieces, and especially a lot of the housing, because they really just tore it down to fit inside this housing. So hypothetically, the next thing you're about to see is me Frankensteining parts of these two cameras together to create at least one sort of somewhat functioning camera out of these two. Okay, I genuinely don't even know how to describe this setup I have going on here, but it just powered up and it's displaying an image on the screen. If I lift this up, You can see an image displaying on the screen right there. I hear the internal fan running. So I'm using the full front section and sensor and all of those components from the broken C100 and then the main board from this working C100 here. And literally with just everything balancing on top of here, it just powered up, it's displaying an image and all that. So now we just need to figure out how to get all of this somehow in some way put back together. All right, so that's the good one, that's the broken one. So I have to figure out a way to swap those out. And yeah, that's gonna be a little bit tricky. But yeah, I'm gonna do the best I can to swap these out from this board, get all that put together onto this camera, and hopefully power it up. Alright, I finally got it together at least enough to try to power this thing on. All the ribbon cables and connectors that I need to should be all assembled and connected at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and provide some power to it, throw on a lens, and then if I hear any signs of life, I'm gonna go ahead and get my monitor and hook that up, and we'll see what happens. This is pretty much the final go at this. Like I said, I've spent way more time on this project than I'd like to admit. So let's give it the final go in 3, 2, 1. Okay, I hear the fan. I'm gonna shut it off real quick. I'm gonna get the monitor hooked up. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, monitor hooked up. Let's power this thing up. I cannot believe that. That is crazy. The amount of times I lost and regained confidence during this project, like, I really can't stress enough that I don't have any formal electronics repair experience. Like, I just love tinkering around with things, and I've done that my whole life and just taken things apart and learned about them. Like, I seriously cannot believe we got this thing to power up. I guess we're not done yet though. I gotta make sure everything about this works. I gotta make sure it records the SD cards. And so I'm gonna do all that, get this put together, and we'll see what the final $110 C100 looks like. The C100 project is complete. That's what you're seeing me through right now, recording in 1080p with the EF 50mm lens, also with dual pixel autofocus. This has the dual pixel autofocus upgrade, which I believe was a $500 upgrade and might still be if you can even still upgrade these cameras with it. And I'm pretty sure a majority of C100s out there don't have this upgrade, so that is awesome to see as well. And so it's back together, all the inputs, outputs, and buttons work on this. The ND filters work, obviously besides missing that rear screen. So everything I do on this has to be through the viewfinder when it comes to going through the menus, changing settings and things like that. So at the end of the day, I paid $110 for a C100 without a rear screen. That sounds like a pretty worthwhile deal to me. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and definitely subscribe for more videos like this in the future, and I'll see you in the next one.